Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's top cop insists that the TTPS can't arrest under Regulation 133. This story takes the lead in our 943rd edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 16th September 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Another Zessa party and police left somewhat powerless. That's a claim by the police commissioner, who says any suggestions that the police can use Public Health Regulation Section 133 to arrest and charge people on private property are misguided. Alicia Boucher of TV6 News reports.
The law applies to everyone. That was the statement made by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, which infuriated Commissioner Griffith. On Monday morning, his dissatisfaction over what he termed the TTPS being thrown under the bus was again made clear.
What law, Prime Minister? There is no law for partying. There is no law for persons who are not prepared to fight the fight. The Prime Minister must be advised by his legal ministers what to say and how to say it. But do not throw the police under the bus by stating that we cannot arrest persons when you have not given us a law for us to do so.
COVID-19 cases continue to rise, and so too is the death toll. But despite this, based on an indication made by Griffith, there are those among the population prepared to disobey, even if there are many lives at risk.
Last night there was a party in Diego Martin, a Zessa Fest. Hundreds of people in the party. The police cannot do anything because we cannot police stupidity, and as I said, we cannot police bad bowling.
The bad bowling the commissioner is referring to is the limit of the regulations and the expectations by government, which he believes extend beyond that limit. And while Section 133 of the Public Health Ordinance has been quoted in relation to the police enforcing the law on private property, the commissioner says au contraire, revealing that he only highlighted it months ago as a coercion tactic.
Even to the point that 4 months ago I made a press release, basically grand charging, playing a poker game, telling the country, please do not feel like we cannot do anything on private property. I had to dig up to find a Section 133 because we did not have that authority to deal with private property persons being irresponsible, to say that the police can enter private property if we feel lives are at risk. But all it meant that when I said that is that we can just come in there, warn and disperse.
Griffith says had he arrested persons at the Bayside pool party, it would have led to lawsuits, which the accused would have won, and taxpayers would have had to foot the bill, similar to the situation spawned from the 2011 state of emergency arrests. The police commissioner believes the blame game has gone on too long, with fingers being pointed at society, restaurant and bar owners, among others, adding that he's drawing the line where his officers are concerned.
What I find very hypocritical is just a few weeks ago, when people were on a truck, even in Caranash and motorcades, with hundreds of people around him going left foot, right foot, dancing Paisi or dancing whatever the UNC was dancing. This was not a problem for the country.
Griffith says the police will continue to stand strong and work within the remit of the law. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
Trinidad's Police Commissioner Gary Griffith attended a meeting held on Monday by the Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley at the Diplomatic Center. He insists that he was invited and not summoned, as the press release from the Office of the Prime Minister indicated. TV6's Joel Brown has that story.
In a Facebook post on his page and that of the Office of the Prime Minister on Monday, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley announced that Police Commissioner Guy Griffith and Acting Deputy Commissioners of Police Ford and Jacob attended a meeting on Monday morning summoned by Dr. Rowley. Dr. Rowley revealed that Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi and National Security Minister Stuart Young also attended the meeting, which began at 10 a.m. at the Diplomatic Center. On Monday, Police Commissioner Griffith was a guest on the TV6 Morning Edition program after having been interviewed on I-95.5 FM on Sunday and elaborated on a statement on Sunday that the police service noted with some degree of disappointment comments made by Prime Minister Rowley on Saturday, where, according to the police, he alluded to and or insinuated that the TTPS failed to do its job as it related to the matter involving a party held at poolside at Bayside Towers in Coquerite. Dr. Rowley said at the media conference on Saturday that while it is not for him to tell the Commissioner of Police who to arrest or who not to arrest and how to apply the law, as Prime Minister he could tell the Police Commissioner that the law must be applied, quote, to protect us in Trinidad and Tobago from those who are not prepared to listen and are not prepared to fight the fight to bring this virus under control, end quote. A reference to the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Rowley also said in Trinidad and Tobago, quote, we expect that the law will be applied to every person regardless of race, color, creed, or class or social standing, end quote. On Sunday, Commissioner Griffith said the law, as currently constructed, does not diminish a person's constitutional rights as a whole or, in particular, their rights to enjoy property. He further said, quote, the Prime Minister, as the most experienced politician in the government, should know that the amendments to the law cannot be done through press conferences, end quote. But the issue involving the Prime Minister's words and the Police Commissioner's words with regard to the enforcement of the COVID-19 health regulations now seem to have been narrowed down to one word. In a statement issued by the Corporate Communications Unit of the Police Service on Monday, the top cop said he was invited and not summoned to the meeting at the Diplomatic Center. The statement from the police service further said that the invitation came through National Security Minister Young for the top cop as well as the AG and Deputy Commissioners of Police Ford and MacDonald to attend. The statement from the police service's Corporate Communications Unit did not stop there, as it went on to say, quote, it is unfortunate that the Communications Unit of the Office of the Prime Minister does not understand the difference between invited and summoned, end quote. The statement from the TTPS Corporate Communications Unit also said it is unfortunate that the Communications Unit of the OPM could, quote, try and put the Prime Minister in such a bad light when that certainly was not the atmosphere and purpose of the meeting at the Diplomatic Center this morning, end quote. There was no statement issued by the Office of the Prime Minister in response to the statement from the Police Service up to news time. The Police Service's statement said that the meeting at the Diplomatic Center was very cordial, adding that now the emphasis will be on all parties moving forward to ensure that the public health ordinance regulations are adhered to by members of the public during the COVID-19 pandemic. On Monday morning, Opposition Leader Kamla Bissessa had called on Prime Minister Rowley to immediately meet with Commissioner Griffith, his deputies and other officials to iron out ambiguities within the public health regulations. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Over in Antigua and Barbuda, Ambassador Lionel Hurst has joined the celebrations of South-South cooperation as encouraged by the United Nations. He is praising the relationships Antigua and Barbuda enjoy with other developing states. ABS's Ursula Charles Jr. recaps the ambassador's comments.
According to the United Nations, South-South cooperation manifests solidarity among peoples and countries of the South and contributes to their national well-being. By South, the United Nations signifies developing nations. Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office and former ambassador to the United Nations, Lionel Max Hurst, says Antigua has benefited greatly from knowledge sharing and technical cooperation with other developing states.
Well, certainly the biggest has been China. Over the past 12 years, China has spent with us in excess of $2 billion in helping us to grow our economy. So it has been a very useful partner. Venezuela is next. We have had the kinds of relations with Venezuela dating back to 1974, when Andres Perez, as president of Venezuela, came to the rescue of Liat. George Walter at the time was premier. And Cuba, of course, is also a very important partner, especially in healthcare.
The ambassador says cooperation will continue even as the countries of the region find a way to save struggling airline Liat. Hurst also comments on the influence developing countries have on the developed world. In recent times, the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office has linked aid to the repealing of buggery laws, and more recently Scotland Yard has made an abolishing of capital punishment a condition of aid. The ambassador says while he understands the rationale, they cannot mandate the following of their principles.
No longer is homosexuality looked upon as evil or sinful, but a lifestyle choice. No longer do they regard the hanging and execution of people as being deserving punishment, but rather cruel and inhuman. And they attempt to export these values. It is very reasonable that they attempt to export these values, but they cannot dictate to other countries what their values ought to be.
By celebrating the relationships in the South, the United Nations is hoping to spread awareness of the economic, social, and political developments made recently by regions and countries in the developing world. For ABS News, I'm Ursula Charles Jr.
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister speaks confidently of having Liat back in the skies in 120 days. Carolyn Beezer of ABS News tells us more.
Prime Minister Gaston Brown has provided an update on plans to save regional airline Liat. He says the administrator, Cleveland Seaforth, has been in talks with creditors.
I believe sometime in the course of next week that it'll be hearing from the various heads within the region to write off the outstanding airport taxes and other fees that were due by Liat.
The Prime Minister says the administrator is also in talks with other creditors to reduce the liabilities of the company so severance can be paid to staff. He says plans are still in place to have the airline up and running within a set period.
The administrator is negotiating with a few prospective investors. I'm not aware that there's any firm deal as yet, but we still remain hopeful that within the 120-day period that we will have Liat back in the air.
The Prime Minister was speaking on his weekend radio show On Point FM.
Meanwhile, Gaston Brown congratulates Mauricio Cueva Caron on his election to the position of head of the IADB.
In a letter addressed to Clava Caron, the Prime Minister says although Antigua and Barbuda is not a borrowing member of the IDB, the country is a beneficiary of the bank's programs through its on-lending to the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB. He says additionally, IDB Invest, which supports private sector projects in areas such as clean energy, modernizing agriculture, and expanding access to financing, is an important institution for the Eastern Caribbean. He says such support is particularly vital at this difficult time, occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Prime Minister says he looks forward to meeting Clava Caron to discuss how relations between Antigua and Barbuda and the IDB can be strengthened, deepened, and widened. Clava Caron, who was nominated by the U.S. government, was elected unopposed during an electronic meeting of the bank's Board of Governors on Saturday. He will take office on the 1st of October for a 5-year term.
The United States-based carrier JetBlue is set to launch a major Caribbean expansion in November with new routes from Aruba to St. Martin. In a recent announcement, the airline said that starting November 19th, it will be launching 7 new non-stop routes to the wider Caribbean, all out of Newark Liberty International Airport. The new routes will include 1 daily flight to Aruba, 2 daily flights to Cancun, 1 daily flight to Montego Bay, Jamaica, 1 daily flight to Nassau, the Bahamas, 1 daily flight to Providenciales, Turks and Caicos, 1 daily flight to Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, and 1 daily flight to St. Martin. The new routes are aimed at immediately generating cash and capturing traffic on a variety of new non-stop routes never flown before by the airline, JetBlue said. This is the latest example of JetBlue's ability to be nimble and play offense as we quickly adjust to new customer behaviors and booking patterns, said Scott Lawrence, head of revenue and planning at JetBlue.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.